Hi, I'm Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. I'm going to demonstrate how to make a disappearing 9-patch quilt. So let's take a look at this quilt behind me. Okay, now you're seeing all different sizes of pieces of fabric in there. Got these tiny little squares here, these long rectangles there, and large squares there. And they're dispersed all over the quilt. But you'll be surprised that this pattern here started out as 9 squares this size, and by the time we were done with it, it came down to multiple sizes of squares. So we're taking a basic 9-patch block and cutting it up and arranging it in a pattern. Also, I have a double strip border, and so you have an option of doing the double strip border, and I'll also tell you how to do a single strip border if you choose to do that. So let's go over what is involved here. Now this quilt is going to be approximately 56 inches wide by 66 inches long. Now it varies depending on the size of squares you start out with. So if you start out with smaller squares, you may have to add a little bit more to your quilt to get to this size, or it may wind up a little bit shorter. Now I've selected 9 different fabrics, and out of the 9, I cut 9 squares of each, okay? So I used scraps in my quilt because I have lots of scraps and I wanted to use them up. My squares that I used in this quilt started out as 6.5 inches, but you can use 5-inch squares that are in a charm pack. And charm packs are pre-cut squares, 5 inches squared, and they have a variety of colors in it. So if you don't have a large stash of fabric like I do, then you can purchase charm packs, and you can purchase 2 of them. And I've seen them priced as little as $10 per charm pack. So that's not bad. Okay, now, or if you're using scraps or whatever fabric you have, you're going to need 81 6.5-inch squares, or you can cut them into the 5-inch size if you like. You have 5 finished blocks are going to be done in each row or placed in each row, and you will have 7 rows, so 5 by 7. As I said, I've used a double strip border. The 2 borders together add up to 8.5 inches. So one is 2.5 inches wide, the other one is 6.5 inches. Or you could combine these 2 numbers and cut an 8.5 inch wide piece of fabric and use just a single border. So you have a few choices there. All right, so take your squares and lay them out, okay, like a basic 9-patch. Now a few weeks ago, I had a video out showing you how to do a 9-patch, and it's a really easy block to do. So we're going to do a quick review of the 9-patch. So you're going to lay out all your squares, 3 in each row. Now I want you to look at the colors. You want to put your most dominant color in the very middle, the most dominant color, the one that stands out the most. Then in each outer corner here, you want the most colorful ones. Most colorful here. Now these 4 squares here, normally you're going to see a very light color in all 4. Because I'm using up scraps, I just picked the lightest and dullest I could find in my scrap pile. Okay, or you can, if you're going to purchase fabrics, you would just pick something really, really light. So lay them out in this pattern. Then stitch the squares together, a 1/4 inch seam, 1/4 inch seam, and then do this row and then this row. Then you're going to go and on the back side at your ironing board, press these seams flat, all of your seams. Then you want to press the seams going in one direction. See how I have them here? They're going in the same direction. So you're going to do all 3 rows like that. Now I'm going to turn all 3 rows over because this next step is really important. Let me turn this one around. You want to make sure that your seams in row 1 and row 3 are going in, whoops, I have this one backwards. I want to make sure I have it right for you. I had it right the first time, sorry. Okay, and then this one. This is why you need to double check. Okay, there we go. So the seams in row 1 and row 3 are going this way. The seams in the middle are going this way. That's so that when we stitch the rows together, they'll match up. So now let me turn them over again. I hope I didn't confuse you. Okay, so now you want to stitch your rows together. So bring front sides together and make sure you match up your seams. Let me get it matched here. And what I mean by match up, get them in real tight where the seam on the bottom is going in the opposite direction of the seam on top. So go ahead and place pins to hold those seams. Then stitch 1/4 inch along here. Okay, and then you want to do the same thing with the next row. Match up your seams. I like to place pins there so that they don't slip. And then stitch 1/4 inch. Then go to your ironing board and press both seams on the back side. And then open it to the front, press the 2 seams on the front side, and I usually press these 2 seams all in one direction. Okay, now if I went too fast for you, there's a link appearing right about now that takes you to the 9-patch video, and it goes a little slower and a lot more detail. Okay, this was just a quick review. All right, so now you want to do all of your squares in these 9-patch blocks. Get all of those done. Once you've got them all done, then you need to square your blocks up, okay? Because they're going to be uneven and jagged, so you want to get them as squared as possible. So select a size you want to get them down to. I'm going to make mine a finished size of 15 inches, okay? Because that's my ruler size, 15 inches. So I'm going to center my ruler over my block and square this all up. So what I mean by squaring is you're going to trim this side and then this side, and then you'll go and do your other 2 sides. So it's all even all the way around. Okay, now you want to cut your block down the center this way and this way. So my center, because it's a 15-inch block, is 7.5. So I'm going to place it in the center and cut it down the middle. And then place it in the middle again, 7.5 inches from the edge, and cut. So now you have these 4 pieces that look like this. Okay, so now you can see where all the little pieces of fabric came from. Now, here's a suggestion for how to lay them out. Here's one pattern. You bring them to where the large squares are in the middle. So you have this 4 patch in the middle here, and then you have your smaller strips and squares surrounding it. Or another very popular one, probably the most popular, is bringing 2 small squares into the middle. Let me line this up a little better so that it looks like this. Okay, so you want to arrange them, lay all of your blocks out, 5 in a row and 7 rows. So let's look up at the quilt so I can show you the pattern that is here. So I'm going to focus right in here, Mr. Cameraman. So you can see 2 squares come together here, and then if you come back over here, you'll see the little rectangle pieces come together here. And it's arranged that way all over the quilt. So play around with your blocks and see what you can come up with. Okay, so I'm just going to lay some blocks out, and I'm going to go over how to put your border on. Okay, now you want to stitch all your rows together. Once you've got them laid out, and I'm just going to randomly throw these out here, okay? You want to just arrange them, and then after you've got them all arranged, you're going to get them going this way. All right. Okay, so you've got them arranged. You're going to take each row and stitch them together, just like you did your 9 patch. 1/4 inch seam here, 1/4 inch seam here, keep going across. Then go to the next row. Stitch them together using a 1/4 inch seam. You're going to go down all 7 rows, stitching them together. Then you want to press all of your seams on the rows. Then when you go to bring the 2 rows together, you want to make sure that the seams in row 2 are going in the opposite direction of row 1. So every other row, your seams are going to go opposite directions, okay? Then once you've got them all stitched together, give it a final pressing so it's nice and straight. Then you're going to measure your quilt. So we're first going to take the longest side here and here, and you're going to measure from this point all the way over to this point, and then you're going to add 1.5 inches to that length, and you're going to cut your 2 strips for this side and this side here, that length. Okay, so I'm going to do a little diagram here for you. So here's all of your quilt blocks that you've just stitched together. 5 across, 7 rows down. So these are all stitched. Now to do your double strip border, as I said before, you're going to measure from here all the way down to here. Cut this strip 1.5 inches longer. So now you've got 2 of them ready to go. You're going to bring them on top, stitch them a 1/4 inch seam. Then press those seams, unfold, and press. Now you'll have a little bit of overhang at each end. You're going to want to trim that off, and I'll go over that in just a little bit. Then come up here, and you're going to measure from this distance all the way over to this distance. Cut 2 strips 1.5 inches longer, then lay them across here and down here and stitch that 1/4 inch seam and do your pressing. Press the seams towards the border strip. Then now you're going to measure for the last border. So now you're going to measure from here all the way down to here. Cut 2 strips out 1.5 inches longer. Then put them on. Okay, that's these 2 pieces here. Lay them on top of this border, stitch 1/4 inch, press, trim any excess off at each end. Then you're going to measure from here, this edge here, all the way over to this edge, and cut your last 2 strips, adding that 1.5 inches, and then trim your corners. So let me show you a little bit better here. So here's your borders. Okay, you've just stitched them on. You'll have a little bit of overhang right here. So you want to take your ruler, as soon as I can find it, lay it along here. After you've stitched it, don't trim anything until you stitched it on. Then trim it to where you have an exact fit in this corner. So trim all 4 corners. Now you're going to take the other 2 strips and you're going to place them here, okay? And then of course at the opposite end. Go ahead and stitch them on. Do your pressing. Then trim the excess off. This way you have exact fit. Then you're going to measure from here all the way down to here. Okay, cut your strips out 1.5 inches longer. Let me get some on here. Lay them on. Okay, and up here, and then stitch them on first before you do any trimming, and then do your pressing, and then trim the excess off, and then do your last 2 pieces. Now remember, this is not to scale. This is just pieces that I had left over. Stitch them on, trim the excess off. So that's how you build your border on. Okay, well, I hope you try this disappearing 9 patch. It's really not that complicated. It's really a lot of fun, and it's a great way to use up those old scraps, because I have a lot of them. I think I could have made 20 quilts out of all my scraps that I have. Now, if you're going to be now ready for the layering, if you don't know how to layer a quilt, that includes putting on your cotton batting and figuring out the amount of fabric you need for the back. So you want to go to that video that explains how to do that. So if you need instructions, click on the link in the upper right hand corner. Then after that, you need to do your quilting stitches or your top stitching. That holds all 3 layers together. If you need instructions on that, then click on the next video in the upper right hand corner. And then your very final thing is to put the binding over the raw edges. So if you need instructions on that, then go ahead and click on the last video there. Now, to keep informed on all my future videos, you want to click on one of the subscribe buttons. There's one down there in the lower right hand corner, and then one of course in the upper left hand corner. It's a round picture of my face, so you can click on either one of those. Once you do that, YouTube will prompt you for your email address. Enter that information, and the next time I have a new video, YouTube sends you a very brief email with a big old button in the middle. You click on it and it takes you directly to my latest video. I'm Cheryl, and I'm so glad you came to my sewing room. I'll see you next time, and happy sewing!